something is wrong with the road. When Nadia's car breaks down on an abandoned stretch of highway, she stumbles into a forgotten village hidden deep within the misty woods. But the village isn't empty. It's waiting, haunted by a mysterious woman in black, and chased by whispers from the past. Nadia must uncover a terrible truth before midnight strikes. Every step pulls her deeper into a curse that refuses to be forgotten. Will she escape the wrath of the Wanita Ahli Neraka, or will she become just another soul trapped forever in the mist? Some stories don't want to stay buried. When was the last time you truly feared the road ahead? In Wanita Ahli Neraka, we dive into the haunting story of Nadia, an ordinary traveler thrust into an extraordinary nightmare. After her car mysteriously breaks down in the middle of nowhere, Nadia seeks help, only to find herself in an abandoned village swallowed by mist and forgotten by time. But the village is far from empty. Shadows whisper, faces watch, and a veiled woman, known only as the Wanita Ahli Neraka, the woman of the Hellfire, stalks the deserted streets, seeking justice for a terrible wrong. As Nadia races against the clock to uncover the tragic truth behind the village's curse, she battles not just for her survival, but for her soul. Along the way, she unearths a tale of betrayal, sorrow, and redemption, and learns that some spirits will never rest until their stories are told. This isn't just another ghost story. It's a journey into forgotten guilt and the power of remembrance. Wanita Ahli Neraka is a chilling reminder that the past never stays buried, and sometimes it comes looking for you. So, fasten your seatbelt, keep your eyes on the road, and remember, not every light you see in the forest leads home. The first sign of trouble was the shuddering noise from beneath the hood. Nadia tightened her grip on the steering wheel as the car jolted, headlights flickering like a dying candle. She pressed harder on the gas pedal, but the engine only coughed in protest. The empty forest road stretched ahead, swallowed by thick mist and deepening twilight. On either side, trees loomed like silent sentinels, their bare branches clawing at the bruised purple sky. With a final choking sound, the car gave up completely and coasted to a halt. Nadia sat there for a moment, breathing heavily, listening to the sudden aching silence. No passing cars, no birds, not even the wind dared to move. She glanced at her phone. No service. The words glared at her like a cruel joke. Cursing under her breath, she pushed the door open. The cool evening air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something older, something sour. She stepped out onto the cracked asphalt, boots crunching against loose gravel. Around her, the trees swayed gently, although she could not feel any breeze on her skin. Popping the hood, Nadia stared uselessly at the engine. She knew as much about cars as she did about rocket science. Steam hissed from somewhere deep inside, swirling upward into the twilight. Then she saw it. A light. Faint. Flickering. Somewhere beyond the wall of trees. Nadia straightened, heart pounding. She wiped her greasy hands on her jeans and peered harder into the woods. It wasn't headlights. It wasn't a flashlight. It was the soft, golden bobbing of a lantern, weaving lazily through the trees like it was being carried by an invisible hand. Maybe someone lives nearby, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. The idea of walking into the forest alone at night sent cold fingers crawling up her spine. But the longer she stood there, the more the shadows seemed to thicken around her, as if the darkness itself was urging her forward. Locking the car out of habit, Nadia stepped into the undergrowth. The first step was the hardest. The snapping of a twig under her boot was shockingly loud. The trees closed around her almost immediately. They seemed to lean inward, hemming her in, muffling the world behind a thick curtain of leaves and mist. Twisting roots grabbed at her ankles. Thorny bushes tugged at her jacket, and still the light danced ahead, always just out of reach. Minutes blurred into an uneasy eternity. Every now and then, Nadia thought she heard something. The crack of a branch, a whisper too faint to be words, the soft rustle of unseen feet. She turned her head sharply, scanning the gloom, but saw nothing except the same endless forest. It was only when she nearly tripped over a crumbling stone wall that she realized the trees were thinning. Beyond the wall lay something unexpected. Narrow dirt paths, the shadows of buildings, the sagging rooftops of an ancient village tugged. Away from the world, the lantern she had been following bobbed once, twice, and vanished. Nadia stood frozen, heart thudding painfully in her chest. The air smelled different here, heavier, tinged with the dusty scent of decay and something far less natural. Behind her, the forest stretched black and endless. In front of her, the abandoned village waited, silent and patient, like it had been waiting a very long time. Somewhere deep inside, a voice, small and trembling, told her to turn back. But another part of her, stronger, more curious, told her to step forward. And she did. The first thing Nadia noticed as she crossed the crumbling stone wall was the silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was something heavier, like a thick blanket smothering all life. The village before her looked frozen in time, as if it had been abandoned in a single, terrible moment. Moonlight slipped through the mist, revealing crooked houses sagging under the weight of years. Their wooden walls were weather-beaten and broken. Windows stared out like hollow, empty eyes. Doors hung open or lay splintered on the ground. Rusted street lamps leaned precariously over cracked cobblestone paths, their glass panes shattered. Long ago. Nadia stepped carefully onto the main path, her footsteps echoing far too loudly. She half expected someone to fling open a door and shout at her, but no one came. The village was dead, or so it seemed. A gust of wind stirred a broken sign swinging from one of the houses. Nadia squinted and made out the faded lettering. Selamat datang. Welcome. She shivered. Something about the place gnawed at the edges of her mind, a feeling she couldn't quite name. It wasn't just abandonment, it was wrongness, something deeper than dust and decay. The light, the strange, flickering light that had led her here, was nowhere to be seen. In its place, only shadows danced across the walls as the mist rolled in thicker, wrapping the village in a cold, damp shroud. Nadia's eyes scanned the buildings. Most were dark, lifeless. But at the end of the main path, there was one exception, a house where faint golden light still glowed behind torn curtains. Hope stirred in her chest. Maybe someone still lived here. Maybe they could help. The house seemed better kept than the others, though only slightly. The paint was peeling, the porch sagging, but it stood straighter, prouder somehow, like it was fighting against the decay that had swallowed the rest of the village. Swallowing her fear, Nadia moved closer. The closer she got, the more she noticed. The curtains twitched. A shadow moved behind them, quick and silent. Someone, or something, was watching. She climbed the creaking steps to the porch. Her hand hesitated over the door, fingers trembling. For a moment, she considered walking away, finding another path, maybe sleeping in her car until morning, but something pulled her forward. She knocked. The sound was like a gunshot in the stillness. Nothing happened for a long, stretched moment. Then, with an agonized groan, the door swung open slowly, revealing a dimly lit hallway lined with faded wallpaper and dusty picture frames. The warm light she had seen from outside came from deeper within the house, a room at the end of the hall, where a fire crackled weakly in a stone hearth. "Hello?" Nadia called, her voice sounding thin and uncertain. No answer. The house smelled of old paper, mothballs, and something else, metallic and sour. The air was thick, almost choking. She stepped inside, her boots sinking slightly into the dusty carpet. The door creaked shut behind her, making her jump. "Is anyone here?" She tried again, louder this time. Still no reply. Nadia moved cautiously down the hallway. The floorboards groaned under her weight. Pictures hung crooked on the walls. The faces in them faded into blurry shadows. She couldn't shake the feeling that the eyes were following her as she passed. As she reached the doorway to the living room, she saw her. An old woman sat in a rocking chair by the fire, wrapped in a dark shawl. Her hair was tied back into a severe knot, her skin pale and sagging like wax. She rocked slowly, back and forth, the chair creaking with each movement. For a terrifying moment, Nadia thought the woman was dead, just a doll left to decay with the house. Then the woman lifted her head. Her eyes were milky with cataracts, but somehow they still pierced into Nadia's very soul. "You shouldn't be here," the old woman rasped, her voice rough like dried leaves. Nadia swallowed hard. "My car, it broke down. I just need help." The woman's lips twisted into something. That might have been a smile, or a grimace. "The road doesn't break down," she said softly. "It brings people here." Nadia blinked, not sure she had heard right. "What are you talking about?" The woman stared into the fire, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Night is coming," she said. "If you stay, you will meet her." "Her?" Nadia asked, dread curling in her stomach. The old woman's cloudy eyes flicked toward her, filled with a sorrow so deep it was almost unbearable. "The Wanita Ahli Neraka," she whispered, "and once she finds you, there is no going back." For a heartbeat, Nadia could only stand there, frozen by the fire's flickering glow, trying to understand what the old woman had said. Wanita Ahli Neraka. The name alone seemed to twist the air around them, making the shadows in the corners of the room stretch and shiver. The fire crackled louder, as if disturbed by something unseen. Nadia took a slow step closer. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice low, almost afraid to break the heavy silence. The old woman's eyes, pale and hollow yet somehow still burning with terrible knowledge, fixed on her. "She was wronged," the woman said, her voice a rasp against the dark. "Wronged by those who should have protected her, betrayed, condemned, burned." A log popped loudly in the fireplace and Nadia flinched. The shadows on the wall leapt and twisted into strange, monstrous shapes. "And now," the woman continued, rocking slightly in her chair, "she waits, she watches, for those foolish enough to stumble into her cursed ground." Nadia's mouth went dry. "But I didn't mean to come here," she said. "I just need to get back to my car." The old woman smiled thinly, and there was no warmth in it, only pity. "The road is closed to you now. You crossed the threshold. You followed the light. She called you." A shiver ran down Nadia's spine. She looked over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, standing behind her. But the hallway remained empty, the old wallpaper peeling like scabbed skin. "You must leave before midnight," the old woman said, her voice rising in urgency. "That is the only way." Nadia felt the weight of the warning settle deep into her bones. "Midnight," she repeated. "Then what?" The fire sputtered. The room grew colder, the shadows darker. "Then," the woman whispered, leaning closer, "you will belong to her, like the others." The others? Nadia didn't dare ask. Some part of her already knew. She had seen the empty houses, the darkened windows, the hollow-eyed faces in the faded photographs. The villagers hadn't left. They had been claimed. "But how do I get out?" Nadia pressed, panic rising in her chest. "Which way?" The woman's eyes drifted to the window. Outside, the mist was thickening, swirling like living smoke between the broken houses. "Follow the bells," she said. "If they ring, it means there is still a path open. But be warned." Her voice dropped lower, nearly inaudible. "Not everything that moves in the mist is alive." A heavy silence settled over them. Only the fire crackled in protest against the deepening cold. Nadia stepped back toward the door, heart pounding. The old woman watched her go with an expression that was almost mournful, as if she already knew the outcome. "And remember," she said as Nadia's hand found the doorknob, "if you hear her voice, do not answer." Nadia paused, her fingers tightening on the cold brass handle. "Why?" The old woman's rocking slowed. Her next words were a brittle whisper, like a final breath. "Because if you answer, she'll know your name." The fire guttered as Nadia slipped out into the misty night, leaving behind the only warmth she might ever find in this God-forsaken place. The door creaked shut behind her with a sound that echoed through the empty village like a tolling bell. The mist was thicker now, so dense it curled around Nadia's legs like living hands, pulling at her, slowing her down as she stumbled away from the old woman's house. The village was no longer silent. A low hum filled the air, almost too soft to hear but deep enough to feel in her chest. Somewhere far off, a bell chimed, a thin, hollow sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Follow the bells," the old woman had said. Nadia rapped, her arms around herself, teeth chattering not from the cold but from the growing sense of dread clawing its way up her spine. The dirt path she followed twisted sharply between the crooked houses, the mist swallowing everything beyond a few feet. She moved quickly, heart hammering, scanning the shifting gloom for any sign of danger. Shapes flitted at the edge of her vision, figures that disappeared when she turned her head. Whispers rose and fell with the swirling fog, threads of broken voices brushing against her ears. "Nadia," she froze. The voice was soft, almost tender, but it wasn't possible. No one here should know her name. "Do not answer. If you answer, she'll know your name." Nadia bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, forcing herself to move, ignoring. The voice that grew more insistent, more coaxing with every step. As she pushed forward, the village itself seemed to change around her. Where there had been a wide path, now there was only a narrow alley, pressed in by sagging walls. Where there had been a familiar house, now there was only broken ruins, their blackened beams jutting into the mist like skeletal fingers. Panic gnawed at her edges. She turned sharply, trying to retrace her steps, but every way she looked, the streets were different. New paths appeared where none had been before, looping and twisting, leading nowhere. The village was a shifting maze, reshaping itself to trap her inside. The bell rang again, closer this time, but distorted, as if underwater. Driven by instinct more than reason, Nadia broke into a run, boots pounding the uneven ground. Her breath came in sharp gasps, clouding the air before her face. The mist thickened, clinging to her, whispering in 100 broken voices. "Nadia, come closer. We miss you. We see you." She clamped her hands over her ears and kept running, ignoring the stinging branches that slapped at her face and arms. Ahead, she spotted movement, a flicker of dark cloth, the hint of a figure moving just beyond the mist. At first, she thought it was another villager, someone alive. Relief flared in her chest. "Hey!" she called, despite herself. The figure stopped. Slowly, so slowly, it turned. It wasn't a villager. It wasn't human. The woman stood there, a veil covering her face, black from head to toe. Her hands hung at her sides, unnaturally long, fingers twitching ever so slightly as if tasting the air. The mist seemed to cling to her, alive and writhing. Nadia stumbled back a step, heart slamming against her ribs. The woman didn't move toward her. Not yet. Instead, she raised one thin, trembling hand and pointed. Nadia didn't wait to see. What came next? She spun and ran blindly down the nearest street, her boots slipping on the moss-slick stones. The mist swallowed her screams. She ran without direction, without thought, her only goal to get away. When she finally stopped, gasping for breath, she realized she was standing in front of her own car. Or rather, what was left of it. The vehicle was still parked where she had left it, but now it was little more than a rusted, hollow shell. Vines twisted through the shattered windows. Moss grew thick on the hood. The tires were nothing but rotted scraps. It looked as though it had been abandoned for decades. Nadia stumbled backward, horror rising like bile in her throat. Time here wasn't right. Nothing here was right. A soft, scraping sound made her spin around. In the mist behind her, figures were beginning to emerge, dozens of them, pale and shuffling. Their faces were gray and hollow, mouths hanging open in silent screams. Some were missing pieces, hands, eyes, even whole sections of their bodies, as if they had been worn away by endless years of decay. They were the villagers, the others, and they were all coming for her. The bell tolled again, louder now, frantic. Without thinking, Nadia turned and fled once more, deeper into the heart of the shifting village, away from the car, away from the gathering dead. The mist swallowed her whole. And somewhere, not far behind, the woman in black followed, her veil fluttering like the wings of a hungry crow. Nadia's lungs burned as she tore through the twisting alleys, the mist coiling around her like cold, wet ropes. Every breath tasted of earth and rust, and every shadow seemed to reach for her as she passed. Somewhere behind her, the bell tolled again, slower now, almost mournful, as if it were counting down something inevitable. Her legs, numb and trembling, finally gave out in front of a narrow house with a sagging porch. Without thinking, she darted inside, slamming the broken door behind her. For a moment, she leaned against it, heart thundering, listening. Silence. No dragging footsteps. No whispered taunts. Only the low crackle of old wood settling under its own weight. Nadia forced herself to move, to explore, to hide if necessary. The house was suffocatingly dark. Only slivers of moonlight pierced the broken windows, painting the crumbling furniture in shades of ghostly silver. Dust hung thick in the air, and each step she took sent little clouds spiraling upward. She stumbled into a hallway lined with photographs. At first, they seemed like any old family portraits, the kind you would find in a grandmother's house, faded and yellow with time. But as Nadia looked closer, unease crawled over her skin. The faces in the photos were wrong. Each villager, men, women, children, stared out with hollow, terrified eyes, their expressions frozen in fear. Their mouths were pressed into tight, grim lines as if they were trying to scream but dared not open their lips. And in every photo, without fail, stood another figure. A woman dressed in black, her face hidden behind a delicate veil, standing behind the villagers like a shadow stitched into their lives. Sometimes she loomed in the background, sometimes she stood close enough to touch. Always silent, always watching. Nadia's stomach twisted painfully. The Wanita Ahli Neraka. She backed away from the wall, bumping into a small wooden table. A dusty picture frame fell to the floor with a sharp crack, the glass shattering. Nadia crouched to pick it up, heart hammering against her ribs. It was a portrait of a family, mother, father, 2 young children, all wearing the same expression of horror. Behind them, closer than in any of the other photos, the woman in black loomed with a hand resting lightly on the mother's shoulder. The mother's eyes in the photo seemed to plead directly at Nadia, desperate, begging for something. A loud thud echoed upstairs, something heavy dropping onto the floorboards. Nadia's head snapped upward, her entire body tensed. She wasn't alone in the house. Footsteps creaked slowly across the ceiling, back and forth, deliberate and slow. A soft whisper floated down the stairs. Nadia, her name again, soft, sweet, calling. Her blood froze. Do not answer. Clutching the broken picture frame like a shield, she edged away from the hallway. She needed to hide, or better, to escape. But the house had other plans. As she turned a corner into what must have been the living room, she found the floor completely caved in. Jagged holes gaped like open mouths in the rotting wood, dropping into darkness. There was no way through. The footsteps upstairs grew louder, heavier, as if whatever was moving was now aware of her presence and eager to find her. Panic surged through her, thick and wild. Thinking quickly, Nadia darted into a narrow closet by the stairs, pulling the door shut just as the footsteps began descending, one slow, dreadful step at a time. Through the crack in the door, she saw a sliver of the staircase. And then she saw her. The Wanita Ahli Neraka. Floating down the stairs, her veil rippling though there was no breeze. Her hands, bone-thin and clawed, trailed lightly along the banister, leaving blackened, rotting streaks wherever they touched. Nadia clamped her hands over her mouth, willing herself not to breathe, not to move, not even to think. The woman in black paused halfway down the stairs. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her veiled face toward the closet door, toward Nadia. Even though she could not see the woman's eyes, Nadia felt the gaze like icy fingers pressing against her skull. The house held its breath. Then, impossibly, the woman smiled. It was not a smile of kindness. It was a promise. And then she drifted past, gliding deeper into the ruined house, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Nadia stayed frozen for what felt like a lifetime. When at last she dared to move, her legs were shaking so badly she almost collapsed. She pushed the closet door open with trembling hands and slipped out into the hallway. The house was silent again. but it was the kind of silence that waits. Clutching the broken picture frame, she forced herself toward the front door. She had to keep moving. She had to find the bell, the way out. As she reached the porch, she risked one glance back at the house. In the upstairs window, barely visible through the mist, the veiled woman stood, watching, waiting. Nadia stumbled off the porch into the mist, her boots skidding on the slick stones of the twisted path. The broken picture frame slipped from her fingers, shattering at her feet, but she barely noticed. The air was different now. Alive. Electric. The village pulsed around her. Every broken house, every crooked street, humming with invisible energy, as if the very ground were waking up from a long, hateful slumber. The mist, once lazy and slow, now churned in thick, hungry waves. The bell tolled again, louder, closer. It seemed to come from every direction at once, disorienting, spinning her senses into confusion. Behind her, the front door of the house creaked open on its own. A long, low whisper slithered from the darkness inside. Nadia. She didn't answer. She ran. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed with each pounding step, but she didn't stop. The village blurred around her, endless, shifting, as the houses seemed to crowd closer together, their black windows like watching eyes. The whispers grew, louder, no longer pretending to be gentle. Nadia, stay. With us, figures moved in the mist, thin, gray shapes with hollow faces and stretched mouths frozen in eternal terror. They stumbled after her, arms reaching out, fingers scraping the air. Their broken bodies jerked unnaturally with each step, as if dragged by invisible strings. Nadia darted left down a narrow alley, barely squeezing between two collapsing houses. Rotting wood scraped her jacket. A clawed hand lunged from a window, missing her by inches. She heard it scratching desperately at the frame as she fled. Everywhere she turned, the dead villagers followed. Silent, relentless, endless. The bell tolled again, but now it was wrong, twisted into a sickening, broken clang that rattled her bones. The sound made her stumble, made her doubt her own steps. The village was leading her somewhere. She realized it too late. The path widened suddenly into a square, or what had once been a square. In the center stood a well, its stones slick with dark moss. The broken statue of a woman crumbled atop it, her face worn away by time. Around the well, the villagers waited, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. A wall of rotted bodies and hollow faces, standing in a perfect, unmoving circle. They didn't speak, they didn't breathe, they simply stood there, blocking every path away. Nadia skidded to a halt, chest heaving, trapped. A sound drifted from the well, a soft, wet slithering, and then, from the mist behind her, the steady tap-tap-tap of footsteps. Not running, not stumbling, walking, measured, certain, hungry. Slowly, Nadia turned. The Wanita Ahli Neraka approached, gliding over the broken stones as if gravity had no hold on her. Her veil rippled in an unseen wind. Her long, bony hands flexed slowly, as though savoring the moment. There was nowhere left to run. The dead closed in, tightening their circle. Their faces were not angry. They were empty, drained, as though long ago they had given up hope. The woman in black stopped a few feet from Nadia. The mist thickened until all the world beyond them was erased, leaving only the two of them and the silent crowd. Nadia's heart pounded wildly, a trapped bird in her chest. The Wanita Ahli Neraka lifted a trembling hand, and beckoned. A simple gesture, a summons, an invitation. Nadia's knees buckled and she dropped to the ground. The world spun around her, tilting and reeling. The whispers filled her head, louder now, almost screaming. She fought to stay conscious, fought to remember the old woman's warning. Find the truth or be trapped forever. Through the roaring in her ears, she realized something. The woman wasn't attacking. She wasn't rushing toward her. She was waiting for Nadia to make a choice. Surrender or fight. Somewhere, deep beneath her terror, a flicker of stubbornness sparked. She wouldn't end like them. Clenching her fists, Nadia forced herself to her feet. She took one shaky step backward, then another, until she bumped into the cold stone of the well behind her. The villagers stirred slightly, whispering in hoarse, broken voices. Their mouths moved without sound. The woman's hand trembled in the air, not in rage, in need. She needed something Nadia still had. The bell tolled once more, high and wild. In that piercing sound, Nadia heard it. A direction, a path, a way out. Without thinking, she ducked low and sprinted toward the smallest gap between two villagers. Their cold hands brushed her shoulders, clawed at her jacket, but somehow, she broke through. The mist exploded around her. Screams rose behind her. The mist shrieking in fury, the footsteps pounding in desperate chase. But Nadia didn't look back. She ran. She ran until the mist thinned, until the whispers faded into distant wails, until the village itself seemed to melt into shadows behind her. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the dark forest beyond, was the truth she needed to find. And she knew the hunt was not over. It had only just begun. The forest loomed before Nadia, ancient and silent, the mist clinging to the gnarled roots like a second skin. Her body screamed with exhaustion, but something stronger than fear, stronger even than the will to survive, pulled her forward. A faint glow flickered ahead. Not the sickly light of the village, but a warmer, steadier glimmer, like a candle burning against a storm. She stumbled toward it, branches tearing at her jacket, unseen things brushing against her arms. Her boots slipped in the mud, but she didn't stop. The light grew stronger, casting long golden fingers across the twisted trees. At last, Nadia burst into a clearing. There, at the center, stood the old woman's house. It was impossibly out of place, just as broken and battered as before, but standing here, deep in the heart of the forest, as if it had moved to follow her. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. The windows glowed with firelight, and sitting in the doorway, waiting, was the old woman. Her shawl was wrapped tighter around her thin shoulders, and her milky eyes seemed even cloudier now, but there was a grim determination in the set of her jaw. "You lived," the woman said, simply, as if she had not expected it. Nadia collapsed onto the porch steps, gasping, mud-streaked and trembling. She managed a nod. "They're still coming," she whispered. The old woman nodded solemnly, reaching behind her into the shadowed house. When her hand returned, she held something wrapped in cloth, heavy, square-shaped. With trembling fingers, she peeled away the cloth, revealing a leather-bound book. The cover was cracked and brittle with age, but stamped into its surface was a single word: dosa, sin. The woman offered it to Nadia without ceremony. "This," she rasped, "is their story, and hers." Nadia took the book, feeling the weight of it. not just in her hands, but in her soul. It radiated something heavy, sorrowful, and terribly real. "You must read it," the woman said. "Understand it. Only then can you leave." A roar sounded in the distance, the furious cry of the mist, knowing it had lost her. For now, Nadia flipped open the brittle cover. The pages inside were filled with delicate, slanting handwriting. The first entries were simple: daily life in the village, harvests, marriages, births. Normal, happy memories frozen in yellowed ink. But as she turned the pages, the tone changed. Fear crept into the words. Paranoia. Tales of failed crops, of children falling ill, of animals found mutilated at the edge of the forest. The villagers grew desperate, and when people are desperate, they seek something, or someone, to blame. Nadia's fingers tightened on the pages as she read the name again and again, scrawled, in accusing, furious lines, Siti Rama. A woman who lived at the village's edge. A healer, a midwife, a woman who knew the old ways, the forgotten remedies whispered from grandmother to granddaughter. At first, they had come to her for help, for hope. But when their prayers failed, when their crops withered and their children cried out in fever, they turned on her with teeth bared and torches raised. The book didn't soften the tale. They dragged her from her home. They branded her a witch. They tied her to the old tree at the heart of the village and set the fire themselves. The final pages were a jumbled scrawl, almost unreadable, as if the hand that wrote them had been shaking with terror. It described how, with her last breath, Siti Rama had spoken a curse not of hatred, but of sorrow. A curse not to punish, but to remember. To make sure the village never forgot what it had done. And so the villagers remained, trapped in their rotting homes, their souls caught between worlds, while the Wanita Ahli Neraka, the woman of the Hellfire, wandered, a shadow stitched into the bones of the village itself, forever seeking justice that would never come. The bell had once been the village's call to prayer. Now, it tolled for the damned. Nadia closed the book slowly, her heart breaking under the weight of it. Siti Rama was not a monster. She was a victim. A memory twisted into fear by those who could not face their own sins. "You understand now," the old woman whispered. Nadia looked at her, tears burning in her eyes. "Is there a way to set her free?" The old woman gave a slow, weary nod. "You must return to the place where she died. You must give her what was stolen. Truth and sorrow. Only then can the curse be broken." A fresh chill brushed across Nadia's skin. The mist was rising again. There wasn't much time. Clutching the book to her chest like a shield, Nadia stood on trembling legs. She turned back toward the misty trail leading to the heart of the dead village, toward the well, toward the tree, toward her. As she disappeared into the darkness, the old woman's voice floated after her. "Be quick, child. Midnight is near." And Nadia ran once more, not from fear, but toward redemption. The mist closed around Nadia as she ran, thicker and colder than ever, swallowing the trees, the stars, even the sky itself. The book pressed tightly against her chest was the only warmth she carried, its leather cover almost seeming to pulse, with a life of its own, the heartbeat of a memory desperate to be set free. The tolling of the bell had faded into a slow, mournful knell, barely audible beneath the heavy shroud of fog. Ahead, the village loomed once more. But it wasn't the same. The houses leaned in closer now, twisted and gnarled like monstrous things. Their windows glowed faintly with a sickly, green light. Shadows shifted inside, watching, waiting. Nadia forced herself onward, each step heavier than the last. The ground itself seemed to resist her, the mud sucking at her boots, the air thick as syrup in her lungs. At the heart of the village, she saw it. The tree. It rose from the center of the square like a blackened skeleton, its bark charred and cracked, its branches clawing at the night sky. Around its roots, the stones of the old well were crumbling into dust. And there, at the foot of the tree, stood the Wanita Ahli Neraka, Siti Rahma. The woman's veil fluttered around her like mist, her form, both solid and spectral. Beneath the thin fabric, Nadia caught glimpses of a face ravaged not by evil, but by sorrow. Siti stood motionless, as if waiting. The villagers formed a wide circle around the tree, their pale faces turned toward Nadia. Their hollow eyes glistened, with something that looked almost like hope or fear, or both. Nadia's legs trembled as she stepped into the square. The mist parted just enough to let her pass. She clutched the book tighter and walked slowly toward the tree, toward the woman whose pain had poisoned this place for so many years. As she approached, Siti Rahma's head tilted slightly, as if curious. Nadia stopped just a few feet away. The world held its breath. With shaking hands, she lifted the book, the record of the village's betrayal, the story they had buried in fear and lies, and placed it carefully at the base of the scorched tree. She knelt before it, lowering her head, and spoke into the stillness. "I know what they did to you. I know your pain. I am sorry." The words were small, fragile things, but in the heavy silence they rang like bells. "I see you," Nadia whispered. "I remember you." A tremor rippled through the ground. The mist thickened into ghostly forms, the memories of the villagers, as they once were, living, laughing, innocent. The children running through the square, women hanging laundry, men laughing over market stalls, and then the fire, the accusations, the screams, the faces twisted in hatred. The circle tightened around the memory, forcing Nadia to watch it unfold. She saw Siti Rahma dragged from her home, beaten, tied to the tree that now stood blackened by her suffering. She heard her final words, not a curse of rage, but a plea for justice, for remembrance. The villagers who had lived in fear were trapped by their own shame, their souls anchored to the place of their crime, and Siti, forever wandering, forever mourning, because no one had dared to speak the truth. Until now. Tears blurred Nadia's vision. She pressed her palm to the damp earth beneath the tree, whispering, "I free you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the ground at the base of the tree began to glow, a soft, golden light pulsing like a heartbeat. The mist recoiled, hissing. The villagers, the real ones, not their cursed shells, raised their hollow faces to the sky. Hope flickered in their empty eyes. Siti Rahma stepped forward. Closer. Nadia held her breath as the veiled woman approached, her movements slow, deliberate. When she stopped before Nadia, she raised one ghostly hand and lifted the veil from her face. Her features were worn and lined with grief, but beautiful, noble, full of deep sorrow and deeper strength. Her dark eyes shimmered with unshed tears. For a moment, Nadia and Siti simply stared at one another. Two women from different worlds, bound together by suffering, by truth, by something greater than both. City reached out and brushed the back of her spectral hand against Nadia's cheek. A blessing, a thank you. The mist exploded into a blinding white light. The villagers cried out, not in fear, but in joy, as the chains of their guilt shattered, releasing them into the night. The burned tree crumbled into ash, carried away on a sudden breeze that smelled of rain and earth and freedom. When the light faded, the village was gone. Only an empty field remained, bathed in silver moonlight. Nadia stood alone, the book at her feet, now nothing more than ash and dust. Above her, the stars blazed brilliantly in the clear sky. She knew she could leave now. The road would be open. The way home was waiting. But for a moment longer, she stood in the field, feeling the peace that had come at last. The woman in black was gone. But her memory, her truth, would live on. Nadia turned and walked toward the edge of the forest. The weight lifted from her shoulders, her heart somehow lighter and yet forever changed. Behind her, the wind whispered through the empty field, soft, almost like a song. Thank you. The forest was different now. Gone was the oppressive mist, the twisting roots that had tried to snare her. Instead, the trees stood tall and still, their leaves whispering softly in the midnight breeze. Moonlight dappled the forest floor in silver patterns, lighting Nadia's path as she walked, steady and unafraid, for the first time in what felt like forever. Her boots crunched gently over fallen leaves. Every breath she took was clean and cool, washing away the last clinging tendrils of fear. The weight she had carried, the curse, the sorrow, the guilt not her own, had lifted. And yet she knew she would never be the same. Ahead, through a break in the trees, she saw it. The broken road where her journey had begun. Her car sat where she had left it, but it was no longer rusted and ruined. It looked exactly as she had last seen it, headlights off, windows intact, the key still, dangling in the ignition. For a long moment, Nadia simply stared. It was as if the nightmare had been scrubbed away, leaving no trace behind but the memories etched into her heart. The forest behind her rustled, and for a moment she thought she saw movement. A flicker of black cloth, the glint of a watchful eye. But when she turned, there was nothing there, only the whispering trees and the soft hum of the wind. She approached the car, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage, but when her hand touched the door handle, it was solid, warm from the lingering heat of the day. Sliding into the driver's seat, she turned the key. The engine roared to life with a comforting rumble, as if no time had passed at all. Nadia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and leaned her forehead against the steering wheel for a moment, letting the quiet hum of the car ground her. When she looked up, she caught her own reflection in the rearview mirror. Pale, tired, but alive. And behind her, just for an instant, standing at the edge of the forest, she saw her. Siti Rahma. Not the veiled specter that had haunted the village, but a woman whole again, peaceful, radiant under the light of the full moon. Her face was no longer twisted in sorrow. Her eyes were soft, almost smiling. Nadia blinked, and the figure was gone. But the peace lingered, woven into the air like a blessing. She pulled onto the cracked road, the tires crunching over gravel, and drove forward into the night, the forest falling away behind her. The clock on the dashboard flickered to life. 12:01 a.m. She had made it. As the road stretched before her, endless and free, Nadia felt a deep, quiet certainty settle into her bones. Some stories never truly end. Some memories are too strong to fade. And some promises. The promise to remember. To honor the forgotten. Echo through the world long after the last candle has gone out. The road twisted through the hills, leading her home. And somewhere, hidden in the folds of night, the wind carried a single whispered word. Thank you. If you love spine-tingling mysteries with deep emotional twists, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the bell so you never miss another chilling story that keeps you awake at night. Share this journey with someone brave enough to face the mist.